Today, we focus on the minority communities, the many minority communities that are under brutal attack, some of them on the brink of extermination by ISIS. Principally in Iraq and in Syria, but elsewhere as well. And we're joined by individuals who have personally faced this threat and are familiar with the extreme hardship, with the grief that displaced minorities face in that troubled region. ISIS has unleashed a campaign of brutal violence, depraved violence, not only against Shia Muslims and fellow Sunnis who do not share their radical beliefs, but against vulnerable religious and ethnic minorities. And as Ms. Isaac put it simply in her prepared testimony, we cherish ethnic and religious diversity. ISIS hates it. Many Americans may not realize that Iraq and Syria are home to dozens of ethnic and religious minorities with ancient cultures, with deep roots. These communities, Assyrian and Chaldean Christians, Yazidis, Alawites, and others, are under mortal threat in their ancestral homelands. And the mass execution of men, the enslavement of women and children, the destruction of religious sites is part of the ISIS effort to destroy these communities, to destroy all evidence of the preexistence of these communities. In fact, ISIS maintains a special battalion. They call it the Demolition Battalion. And that battalion is charged with going after art and going after artifacts, religious and historic sites that it considers heretical or idolatrous. And their job is simply to destroy history. The situation for some of these groups was precarious even before ISIS. According to some estimates, more than half of Iraq's religious and ethnic minorities have fled the country over the last dozen years. But what they face today is annihilation by ISIS. And the influx of ISIS extremists has become a plague. The fall of Mosul in June of last year uprooted 2 million souls, 2 million human beings. Members will recall the U.S.-led airstrikes and operations by Kurdish forces last August to break the siege at Mount Sinjar, where thousands of Yazidi refugee families had been trapped by ISIS. The physical security and welfare of displaced minorities is an immediate priority. Options for U.S. assistance range from additional material support to friendly forces, all the way to creating safe zones or no-fly zones. And while it's important to weigh the costs of each option, we cannot lose sight of the fact that people are being kidnapped, people are being tortured, women are being raped, and children, and they're being killed every day. Beyond that, we need to focus more on their psychological well-being. Many of those people, especially women and girls, have been subjected to unspeakable traumas. The young men are mostly just slaughtered. And as with any displaced population, as their vulnerability increases, so does the threat of human trafficking. What can be done to better protect women and girls at risk of slavery? Finally, what can and should be done to keep these evacuations from becoming permanent? It would be a tragedy if well-intended resettlement fulfilled the goal of ISIS itself. In other words, to drive these believers out. Are there ways to support the reconstruction of local institutions and civil society so that post-ISIS, and there must be a post-ISIS, these communities can return and thrive in their ancestral homelands? I'll now turn to the ranking member, Mr. Elliot Engel of New York, who's been a true leader on Syria and on the humanitarian and human rights disaster in the region, for his opening comments.